Hi everyone, I'm Saskia, the Assistant Editor of Voicemag, and today I'm joined by Mel Ezechukwu, who is going to talk to us about being a Black woman in the tech industry for this month's International Women's Day theme. Hi Mel.
Hi Saskia, great to talk to you today.
Great to have you here. So how have you been?
I've been good. Yeah, I've been really busy actually, but in a good way. So yeah, can't complain.
So just before we dive in to talk about breaking the bias and kind of what International Women's Day means to you, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Of course, yeah. So my name's Mel Ezechukwu and I'm a digital consultant. And I've kind of worked in the digital and the tech industry for over 14 years now. I work predominantly with the kind of non-profit or charity sector, but I've also kind of worked with agencies and commercial companies as well. So yeah, that's what I do, and no one ever really knows what I do.
It's one of those jobs where it's like, oh yeah, that's what Mel does, and then just don't ask me for any more details.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of basically I help people to do things better online. So if they might be using digital channels or tools like social media, and I'd help them use those tools and channels more effectively, or I might be helping them design like digital services or products. And so I basically work with them to create the strategic foundation for that. So, we'll work through things like who their users or their audiences are and what their goals might be and how will those audiences find you and how will you measure your success. And then we'll look at the long-term roadmap as well. So where do you want to be in kind of 1 year's time, 5 years time, 10 years time? Yeah, that's the long answer of what I do.
Okay, well that definitely sounds more like easier to understand. So you're talking to us today because it's International Women's Day coming up, and at Voice I always make sure that International Women's Day goes on for the whole month because a day is just not enough. So this
Absolutely.
so this year's theme is actually break the bias. So I just want to ask you, how do you break bias in your everyday life, and what does that mean to you?
What does that mean to me? I think like breaking the bias to me means disrupting the status quo, I think. So I see it as it's about kind of looking at those sectors or those areas of society that are still really unequal and basically forcing them to change or making them change. So, they might be still dominated by a certain gender or a certain ethnicity or like the same kind of group think. And I think it's about making sure that you've got that kind of diversity of thought and diversity of decision making. And you look at not just how you get more diversity into those areas, more women into those areas, more women of color into those areas, but also actually how do you make sure that when they get there and when they enter those environments, they stay there. So what are you doing to ensure that they feel empowered, that they feel listened to, that they feel valued equally? So it's, one thing is getting people into those different sectors and areas of society, and the other one is the other side of it is making sure that they feel welcomed and that they stay when they're there and they're able to progress and develop, and hopefully get into leadership positions and positions of power. I think it's particularly important that we kind of break the bias, that we get more representation and diversity in those areas of society that have so much influence over our lives. So like the tech industry is one of those areas. Politics would be another. I think it's really important that we get more women, particularly more women of color, into those areas. In terms of how I break the bias in my own life, I'm a big believer in kind of small kind of actions going towards change. So I kind of I guess I try to be a good role model and mentor for women and young girls. And I think for me, I like to kind of show them what's possible. I like to kind of show them that the tech sector shouldn't be closed to them. So I think it's about kind of, working with working with women and young girls, like mentoring them, encouraging them, but also kind of preparing them for things that they might face, so that they're not kind of put off. If they do encounter challenges, undoubtedly they will encounter challenges. I also sit on the steering committee for a Black Women in Tech organisation, and we kind of run a really supportive network for women of colour and Black women, and we also run lots of events to try and get more women into tech. But I mean, their events are kind of, about lots of different things, personal development, career development. I mean, we did one a couple of months ago on imposter syndrome. We did one a couple of weeks ago about NFTs. So it's kind of, focus on that upskilling, development, building confidence, all of that stuff.
I mean, imposter syndrome, sorry, imposter syndrome is definitely something that women get a lot more than men. And I think that's obviously because, a lot of the environments that we exist in, they're very like male dominated. They're, created by men. Your tech industry especially is heavily dominated by white men. How did it feel like kind of like breaking into that? And did you like face any challenges as well?
Yeah, I've definitely had some challenging times over the years. Some, kind of some like racial or gender discrimination, sometimes really blatant, particularly in the early days, but mainly quite subtle. And it's the subtle stuff that's really difficult because it's really hard to prove, and it almost feels a bit like gaslighting sometimes. I think you have to be quite you have to have a lot of you have to really know yourself, and I think have quite a lot of confidence in yourself when dealing with that kind of, when knowing that actually what you're experiencing is that it is real. It's not, not allowing yourself to be gaslit, or not allowing yourself to kind of think that maybe you're imagining this stuff. So that can be really cool. I think that I have to be kind of realistic that I am a light-skinned mixed race woman, so I've experienced discrimination and I've experienced challenges, but I'm under no illusions that I know I will have had an easier time of things than other women, for example, particularly dark-skinned Black women. So it's kind of, it's been challenging, but I think it's, you kind of look at it, it sits on a sort of spectrum, I guess. And I would say that it's definitely got better. Like in the early days, there was some like really blatant, like some language and behavior that would just not be tolerated now. I think it's much harder to get away with stuff like that, like the really blatant stuff. People will just name and shame you, and you'll be finished.
What do they do?
No, I mean, like if the perpetrator is using kind of language that's behavior, like it's much easier to kind of highlight that, and kind of you can name and shame that behavior, and name and shame those companies if they don't do anything about it. But yeah, the subtle stuff is definitely, it's quite challenging. I'd say like the kind of the biggest impact has probably been just confidence, really. I think it's, you have to really you're constantly kind of assessing yourself, and you have to really like know and trust in yourself, and you have to, sometimes you're going to walk into rooms where you're going to be the only woman in that room, or you're going to be the only woman of color in that room. You have to be really confident. You have to know that you deserve to be in that room, and that you've earned the right to be in that room. And I think that building that confidence just comes with time and learning to advocate for yourself, learning, you know, when you might be getting taken advantage of, or when someone's treating you differently because of your gender or the color of your skin. And a lot of that does come with experience and does come with sort of, you know, like recognizing what your boundaries are.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'd probably say that's kind of the biggest challenge for me in the that's, you know, working in a quite white male dominated industry is sort of knowing my worth, knowing my strengths, being confident that I deserve to be there.
Mm-hmm. So when you did like the workshops on imposter syndrome, do you have any advice on how like to kind of overcome that? Because as I said, it is something that lots of women do struggle with.
Mm. It's a really tough one because I think, like, in a way, I think imposter syndrome is sort of a natural reaction to, you know, I think it's kind of labeled as this sort of irrational thing,
Mm.
something that you shouldn't be feeling. But at the same time, I actually think it's a natural reaction to uh, trying to put, you know, trying to really force your way into industries and sectors that were actually not set up for you. So, you know, a lot of these industries, you know, they have been set up to bolster and promote a certain type of person and set up around their needs. And you know, I think, like, when you're entering environments where you know that you're still not particularly welcome in that environment, of course you're like, that's going to shake you. Of course you're going to have this feeling of like, do I actually like deserve to be here? So I don't think it's an irrational thing. um I think that in terms of tackling it, it's a difficult one. I think it's like, you know, confidence is a big side of things. I think it's, you know, and that grow, you know, you can't force yourself to be more confident. It's that
Mm.
sort of growing with time. As I said, like learning what your boundaries are. I think it's knowing your stuff. So, you know, being really kind of knowledgeable in the sector that you're in or the discipline that you're in. Um, I think as well, like, there's things you could do around sort of getting a mentor, getting a coach. They will kind of teach you how to, or help you work through challenges, advocate for yourself. And also it's good to have that person, you know, your mind, you can be your own worst enemy sometimes. You know, the way that we talk to ourselves sometimes, we wouldn't talk to our enemies like that. You know,
Yeah.
we kind of, we really do ourselves down. And I think, you know, a coaches in particular are really good because it's someone outside of you telling you how talented you are, telling you about your worth, sometimes literally telling you this is what you should be charging for your services. You're underpricing yourself. So I think, you know, that's really helpful to get that outside perspective. Even if you can't afford a coach or you can't get a mentor, asking your friends, asking your family, you know, getting them to look at you and tell you what are my talents, what are my strengths, you know, and starting to kind of build up this picture of how great you are, really, and starting to build that kind of little force field around yourself that you know, that kind of shields you from some of those you know, some of those criticisms or some of those hard times.
Mm.
um so yeah, I'd probably say those things. You know, I mean, I've had both a mentor and a coach throughout my career, and they've massively helped me through some really challenging times in my career.
Mm.
So yeah, I would definitely say that's a good route to go down. Also, just joining like supportive networks, because you're not alone and you're not going to be the only one thinking this thing,
Yeah.
you know, think that I don't deserve to be here, I don't know what I'm talking about, or whatever. You know, there's loads of great communities out there, where you can get that kind of you know, validation and support from people that are experiencing the same things.
Yeah, and I think it's what you said about, you know, there are certain environments, certain industries that weren't built for you. They were built to like bolster somebody else like a different kind of person. I think also remembering that the fact that you're an imposter is not something, or feeling like an imposter is not your fault, because those industries have been built for other people, and the only way to break down those walls essentially is by being that person who's got the foot in the door and is gonna add to the representation and change the representation of that said industry as well. So yeah, having a supportive network around you whilst you're on that journey is definitely really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think as well, like it is important. I know it's a kind of a term that's thrown about a lot now to the point where it loses meaning, but self-care as well is important. And I mean that in terms of, there is a tendency, particularly for women, like to over deliver,
Mm,
and to feel like, okay, well, I have to be the expert in the room, I have to know more than everyone else, because I'm going to be judged more harshly, or because I need to prove that I belong in that room. I need to go above and beyond on this project more than anyone else, because I need to prove that I deserve to be on this project. No one can ever be the expert on anything, and I think very quickly down that path lies burnout. And so I
yes.
think you have to know as well when you are doing the most, basically, when you're doing way too much, and you need to just take a break and relax a bit. And again, I think mentors and coaches are really good for kind of um, helping you with that, and helping you see when actually you might be actually doing too much.
Yeah. There's a lot of conversation right now surrounding burnout, and I think it's definitely one of those things where you feel like you have to do the most, especially the more kind of, I don't really know what the word I'm looking for is, but the more things that you have against your name, it's almost like the more you feel like you have to prove yourself. Oh, you're a woman. Okay, so you've got to work 10 times harder than everybody else. Oh, you're a mixed race woman. That's 25 times harder. Black woman, 50 times. Do you know, it's like constantly the more things against your name, the harder you're made to feel like you need to go above and beyond, and you're right, it's absolutely not the case. And you have to, without you nothing works, so you have to take care of yourself, and not in the
Mm.
cliche, face mask on Sundays, which I do, by the way. But
It shows.
it's but just the general kind of looking after yourself, knowing when to switch off, knowing when to close the laptop and just relax and take some you time, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So you and I actually met Women of the World speed mentoring on the London Eye, inspiring all these young girls, which was a really great day, by the way. Um, what what advice, because obviously we're a platform for young people, what advice do you have for younger girls, women, those who identify as female, who like just on being a woman and how to navigate the challenges and stuff that are gonna inevitably be thrown at them?
That is such a tough question. um, You know what? As I get older, I find I am leaning much more into my femininity, and I mean that in terms of, when you're growing up, I feel like things that are sort of seen as feminine, as women's things, are kind of like overwhelmingly denigrated or disrespected, or even just down to the language we use, like, you run like a girl or whatever, like, there's
Yeah.
I think actually, as I've got older, I've really, I love being a woman, and I love doing things that are seen as traditionally feminine. And I think it's kind of, first of all, knowing that it's okay to be a girly girl, if you want to be a girly girl, whatever that means to you. I think
Mhm.
it's okay to like things that are typically feminine. It's you don't have to mold yourself into something else because you feel like you need to fit in there. You don't
Mhm.
have to, be more, I don't know, be more aggressive, or look down on things that might be seen as typically feminine because you feel like you need to fit in, or I think it's about recognizing that there are some really awesome things about being a woman, and those are deserving of respect, and that it's okay to be your most authentic self as a woman, whatever that means to you. I've had those times growing up where I've sort of tried to like mold myself to fit, other people's ideas of, what I should be, or what a mix should be, or what a woman in tech should be. And I guess as I've got older, I've just got a lot more belligerent about that, and I don't want to mold myself anymore to fit other people's expectations. So I think, first of all, just knowing that it's great to be a woman or a girl. It's great to if that's what you want to do, is engage in things that have been traditionally seen as feminine, or women's things or girls' things, then that's great. Don't be ashamed of that. Don't let anyone tell you that you shouldn't do that. So that's probably like my first bit of advice. My second bit of advice would be try to surround yourself with awesome women that you can learn stuff from.
Amen.
Definitely. I just, I've got so many women in my life that I love and appreciate and look up to, and I know that I wouldn't be the woman I am today without them. Shout out to mum at this point, but like I think both, it's good to surround yourself with women that can kind of add different things to your life, or that you can learn different things from. So obviously you're going to have your friends and your family that you love, and they bring the humor, and they bring the fun, and they bring that support. But then also try to find women that maybe are in the careers that you want to transition into, or just doing really cool things. Maybe they're activists, maybe they're politicians, maybe they're working in an industry that you want to get into. And you want to learn from them, you want to listen to them, you want to hear the things they're saying, you want to see the things they're doing, find out how they're navigating certain challenges and coping with life. And I think that's really important, to have strong female role models, because they bring a perspective that a man is never going to be able to bring. You can have strong male role models as well, of course, but I think you really want to get that perspective from someone who's going to understand the challenges that you're going to face.
Absolutely. Well, Mel, I think that's a great place to end it on. So thank you so much for talking to us today, and well, to me today. I don't know who the us is. Voice, obviously. And happy International Women's Day /month.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.